Hello and welcome to this Telecoms.com webinar produced in association with Radisys. I'm James Middleton, Managing Editor of Telecoms.com. A rise in the volume and variety of data-hungry mobile devices, such as smartphones, tablets and e-readers, is disrupting the industry and forcing operators to invest heavily in infrastructure to support these new devices and services. But the operator business model is also under threat, with new technologies set to impact network performance, subscriber experience and revenues. So in January and February of 2012, Radisys contracted Senza Fili Consulting to interview senior decision makers from operators in North America, Europe and Asia Pacific to find out which technologies they would support or fight. Some of the technologies we're going to look at today include small cell networks, voice over LTE and Wi-Fi Offload. And after their presentations, Monica Paolini, who's a wireless analyst at Senza Fili Consulting and the author of the research, and Manish Singh, who's CTO of Radisys, will both be available to take your questions. You can ask questions at any point in time during the webinar just by typing them into the text box. Now I'm going to hand over to Monica.
Thanks, James. This is Monica Paolini from Senza Fili Consulting, and thanks for participating to this webinar at calling it. Today, what we're going to talk about is an operator survey that we did in January and February to try to see and understand what is going to drive disruption in the wireless industry. And what we did is that we talked to the individuals and operators, decision makers, thought leaders, and tried to get their view about the future. And we will present the results during the talk, and the survey was sponsored by Radisys. And Manish, can you tell us about something about that?
Thanks, Monica. So a few quick words about Radisys. We are a company headquartered in Portland, and our focus clearly is to bring embedded solutions for wireless infrastructure. We do that by enabling and bringing commercially off-the-shelf platforms ranging from ATCA to rack mount servers, COM Express. A lot of these go in the core of the wireless networks, enabling the 3G core networks and now LTE core networks, and beyond in the policy domain, where we offer a number of solutions which are DPI-enabled policy enforcement solutions. In addition to that, on top of our platforms, we offer a wide range of protocol software branded under our Trillium product line. Trillium has been the market leader for 20 plus years in the telecom industry, very widely adopted by all the tier 1 telecom equipment manufacturers around the world. And we focus now Trillium to offer a variety of solutions on the radio access network side, primarily for small cells, femtos, picos, and micros. And then media server, media resource function, that's a key product line in the media plane. Media resource function has been very widely deployed in the networks, primarily for audio conferencing and ringback tones. And now we are extending this product to offer a number of solutions for voice over LTE and video over LTE. In terms of where we sit in the ecosystem, our primary customer base is the telecom equipment manufacturers around the world, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. That's our primary customer base that we offer all the embedded solutions to. And our focus is, again, to bring all the key elements, our platforms, software, media service solutions, as well as our professional services capabilities that enable our customers to customize, integrate, test, verify, and deploy telecom solutions for wireless networks. And we're really very pleased to have sponsored this research that Senza Fili carried out for us. So Monica, why don't we get right into the results of the research?
Yes, thanks, Manish. Before I get into the results, let me tell you a little bit about what we did. So we did two things. We asked people to enter a survey, and you will see a lot of graphs that come from that part. And also, we did a lot of in-depth interviews with operators. And this is because when you do a survey, you really want to go beyond the numbers. You really want to understand what are the thoughts and implications of the results. So in my presentation, I will address both parts and try to put some more substance beyond the graphs that you will be seeing. One thing that I would like to tell you before we go through the slides, because they all have the same format, is that the percentage of responses that you will see means that what we did is that we did a weighted sum of the responses so that you can see how the different responses were across different geographic regions or drivers. But let's get and see what is it we found. First of all, there is the devices are seen as continuing to drive disruption in the mobile industry. And the interesting part is that there is not so much the expectation that there will be a new tablet or a new type of device, which it might happen, but really what the belief of the operators is that the current devices will drive further disruption in changing both the way we use mobile broadband and the way mobile operators can take advantage of the opportunity. Europe was particularly excited about new devices, while Asia Pacific and North America were more interested in the infrastructure part of the business. And also Asia Pacific was more interested in the TDD, LTE part of the equation. And we will talk more about each of the drivers, so I'm not going to spend any more time on this, and then we'll talk about each of them separately. So Manish, back to you. One thing that I wanted to ask is, one constant theme is the increase in traffic growth and the increase in capacity need. Can you tell us something about how you see it from your point of view?
So what we see is clearly for the telecom industry, data remains the growth engine. We continue to see exponential growth of traffic on wireless networks. Operators around the world continue to report traffic doubling on their networks every 12 to 18 months. Now, as we also see this traffic growth, I think there is a fundamental challenge that the operators are grappling with, which is the widening divide between the traffic and the revenue. And that's really driving a lot of demand for solutions that aggressively lower the cost per bit while augmenting capacity in the networks to really manage this exponential growth. But at the same time, in my view, I think the hunt is on to find solutions and service offerings that the operators can bring to market that really drive ARPU, increase revenue. And I think that's the call for the industry today. Now, one of the things we have seen, and is widely reported by the industry as well, that as traffic doubles every year, the type of traffic, video in particular, is a traffic that's growing at a very fast rate on these networks. And primarily, in my view, I think you can really tie it back to the devices. The devices now, thanks to the Moore's Law, are being packed with more and more horsepower, and these data-hungry devices with wide screens are now creating the perfect platform for video consumption. I think we are the early days of seeing the power of devices. And clearly, I think, in my view, the devices will change the usage model further as we go down. So, Monica, I'd like to hear from you on what your research finds there.
Devices will continue to be disruptive because they will change the way we use the services. And what operators indicated is that it will happen in multiple ways. So first of all, the same devices will have larger functionality. So one operator, for instance, said, we see more the smartphone taking on the functionality of a camera rather than the camera getting a SIM card. So we'll have the same devices doing more. But also, the same devices like smartphones will move and be adopted by what they are feature phone users. And that is going to change a lot in the industry in terms of the willingness to pay, the type of services. So we should see that even with the same devices, usage will change in a way that is dependent on the subscribers' interest and willingness to pay. Then tablets might create a second wave of traffic increase. And this is, today, most of the tablets traffic goes over Wi-Fi, but operators expect that to change, and it's very interesting. It's a great opportunity, but it's also something to be careful about because tablets use a lot of data, generate a lot of traffic. And also, cloud applications will have an impact. So we might expect, as one operator said, to see dumber devices rather than smarter ones, which is kind of interesting. And as I said before, the greatest expectation here is that the same devices will continue to drive change. But there is an exception to that, and that's machine-to-machine, where there is a lot of new application, new services, and new devices that are expected to succeed. And Manish, can you tell us more about that?
I think this whole machine-to-machine is really poised for growth, driven by what I see as the mobile Internet of Things. I think where we are today, it's really looking at all these smartphones, tablets, kind of devices whose primary function is to enable communication. But I think as we start looking at what's next, whether it's the cameras or the medical devices for healthcare industry or the connected cars, really making these devices mobile and getting them connected onto the network is the next wave of where I believe the device industry is headed to. Now, all of this is poised to drive increased traffic on the networks, which essentially is going to drive further need, further demand for infrastructure build-out, and at the same time lowering the cost per bit as we build these infrastructure out. Now, I think, Monica, as you touched on the cloud and the devices, I think with data, one of the fundamental things that's really coming on the forefront is the intelligence flight. And this intelligence flight, at least I see, is continuing to go out of the network to either the devices or the cloud. And I think there's the interesting debate that continues to unfold with thin devices and heavier applications residing in the cloud. Keep Moore's law back in the mind. The devices still have a lot of horsepower packed in them, and I think there's more to come as Moore's law continue to perform. So with data, I do see that there is a general intelligence flight, which brings the danger of the core of the network. Is it being set on a path of becoming a dump pipe, transporting bits across the device and the cloud? And I think that's one of the fundamental problems that I think is coming to light with data. Wireless operators, I think, historically have done very well with voice, and they've been able to bring intelligence back in the network, delivering voice services. So why not, Monica, we hear a little bit from you about the research in terms of what are the operators thinking about voice?
I have to say that I was a little bit surprised about this one. There's a lot of interest in voice over LTE. And it's interesting because operators do not need voice over LTE for capacity. They're doing pretty well. As Manish said, they're doing pretty well with voice. And yet, voice is still seen as an essential component, a big revenue generator. And also, VoLTE is seen as a way to decrease the dependency on legacy networks. And also, it's a necessary component to have to ensure a smooth transition between voice and data services. So voice over LTE is not seen as a revenue generator per se, but a facilitator and enabler. And they're not in a big hurry to adopt it, but it's something that operators want to find out more, and they know it eventually they will have to deploy. And also that will also bring the possibility of new services. And obviously conversational video is one of them. And I know, Manish, you have a lot to say about that.
Yeah, thanks, Monica. I was rather intrigued on your slide to see in North America, which is leading the LTE rollout, 75% of the operators have very strong support for voice over LTE. Not surprising that voice is not seen as the growth avenue or revenue generator. But it's more about defending the turf, defending the revenue streams that operators continue to enjoy already on the voice side. And it's all about improving the network efficiencies and taking the CapEx and OpEx out and really taking advantage of a converged all IP LTE network carrying voice and data simultaneously. And I think that's where voice over LTE really has a play. Now, I think one of the things we are looking from a Radisys perspective is as we bring our MPX 12000 voice over LTE media resource function to market, we're looking at the next-gen voice, in particular, high-definition voice with support for AMR wideband. I think that's very, very key to really look at as the LTE fat pipes come to life, what's the next generation voice experience the operators can deliver to the consumer. But voice is really, it's table stakes, it's defending the turf, and that's the starting point. Where we look from here is beyond voice, in particular video, conversational video, starting with video calling, really enabling operators to have not only voice, but voice and video over LTE. And then start looking at a number of new, exciting, value-added services. Services like video conferencing, which today gets very much living in the conference rooms in the enterprises. How do we take that to the next level? Video ringback, video multimedia voicemail or video mails for that matter. So there's a lot of potential that video now brings to the forefront, and that's something we're doing. Also really just talking about MPX 12000, the solution we built on an open 40 gig ATCA platform. Mavenir, one of our customers, is already using a predecessor of this technology, CMS 9000, and is already out in the networks on one of the LTE operator deployments in North America, and more to come. So clearly I think voice is the starting point. Video is where the next opportunity comes in, but video also drives a lot of traffic on the networks. And as we look at a lot of traffic, that to me means a lot of capacity, and that to me also means small cells. So, Monica, what did your research tell us about small cells?
Well, as you say, video is in everybody's mind because of the capacity, and that's what triggers all the attention to small cells and Wi-Fi offload. And the two go hand in hand together, and they are increasingly seen as complementary. We have Wi-Fi offload today. We will have small cells in the future starting already to appear, and we need both because the increase in video traffic is such that there is incredible need for capacity. However, if we look at both small cells and Wi-Fi offload, there is an agreement that we need them both. They're both valuable. They've provided, Wi-Fi offload has provided already a lot of help, and small cells in the long term will be more important. However, if you look at the distribution, it's interesting to notice that Asia Pacific and Europe are a little bit more optimistic about, or they have more either more need or they're more positive on the prospects, and I think that part of it is due to the fact that they tend to have more concentrated urban areas. Two things that did emerge that are quite interesting is that for Wi-Fi offload, the great promise is actually not seen in public spaces, but in residential areas where operators see a lot of traffic coming from, which is a little bit counter the view of Wi-Fi in public hotspots, but it certainly relates to traffic profiles we've seen. In terms of small cells, everybody is very excited about them, but challenges there are interference with the macro layer, the choice of backhaul, and operators see self-organizing networks as being a crucial component. And Manish, can you tell us about how do you see them coexisting? How will they live together, both Wi-Fi and small cells?
Sure. I think Wi-Fi and small cells, I do see them as more complementary technologies. One of the things I think in a broader trend, it's very clear that operators need to find ways to augment capacity on their networks and augment them in a very cost-effective manner. And I think that's where fundamentally small cells come into play. Now, when we look at both small cells and Wi-Fi, in the big scheme of things, it's really the operators now looking at leveraging both licensed and unlicensed to augment more capacity on their networks. From our perspective, I think one of the things we've been doing is really bringing solutions to market, both on the 3G as well as LTE side. In particular, Monica, your survey, as you touched on, interference mitigation, we've been doing a lot of work in that area, both on radio resource management as well as self-organizing networks, the sound aspects of small cells. And I think that's very, very fundamental to make sure that volume rollouts can be done and realized in a very, very cost-effective manner. And we're not doing all of this alone. We've been working hard at creating a very strong ecosystem for small cells, where we've been working with a number of SoC silicon providers ranging from Mindspeed, Picochip, Qualcomm, Cavium, and a number of others that we're working with to really make sure as we bring these software solutions and have a very strong ecosystem around silicon side. Now, as we look at the deployment side of things, one of the issues with small cells as well as Wi-Fi offloading that really has been coming more on the forefront is security. And how do you secure the traffic coming out from small cells into the core networks? Same holds true for Wi-Fi. A large part of the traffic from Wi-Fi can be directly offloaded onto the internet, but there is always a part of the traffic that operators might want to bring into their core, whether it be for operator-delivered services or IMS-related traffic, etc. And how do you secure the traffic as the traffic comes into the core of the network? And I think this is where security gateway, SEG, has a very, very key role in the networks that really are to be built as we bring small and Wi-Fi in the equation. The issue, I think, becomes even more interesting with LTE, with a flat all IP architecture, and even for the macro cells, where operators are either running fiber to the tower or are using leased backhaul wherever available, and that creates or opens up a security hole at the back end of the network between the base stations and the core network. And how do you secure the traffic that originates from a base station, might be going through a variety of backhaul, including leased backhaul? And I think that's where we see a lot of these security-related solutions, the need for security to be dealt in a comprehensive way within LTE as it becomes an all-IP network. Be it on the macro side of it, be it on the small cell side, or for that matter, as operators look at Wi-Fi and offload traffic through Wi-Fi. So, Monica, I think we've talked interestingly about Wi-Fi and small cells and LTE, but can you share your research findings about what are operators thinking beyond LTE?
Thanks, Manish. Actually, I'll move back to security. This is something that we cannot cover here, but it came out very clearly from the interviews that this is a major area of concern. Maybe not a source of disruption per se, but operators are getting very concerned about the security as their networks become more complex. But let's move to the future of LTE. And here, as you might have noticed, LTE-Advanced and the TD-FTD hybrid networks were the drivers that ranked lower among the top 6. And the reason for that, I think, is that operators see that the way forward from a technology point of view in the RAN, it's pretty clear. They're comfortable with it. They think it will work. But at the same time, they don't see it as a major one-time disruptor, but a continuous change. They feel they're on the right track. They will enable change when needed, and they're comfortable and confident that there will be performance improvements and cost improvements. So this is actually, I think, a very good result in terms of we're comfortable that we're moving forward. Now, in terms of LTE-Advanced specifically, here the real focus is carrier aggregation. And other features will be useful, but more further out in time. When it comes to TDD and FDD in the network, it's clear that both versions of LTE will have a place in the market, will both succeed. How they will work together, I think that this is something that we haven't figured out well. But LTE brings the ability to operators, the flexibility to use the spectrum that they have to relieve, again, traffic congestion and increase capacity. But the real core common element in the operator's wish list is spectrum, the efficient use of spectrum. And Manish, can you tell us something about that?
Yes, Monica, I think really spectrum is the most scarce resource when we look at wireless networks. And I think, first of all, clearly in terms of the spectrum, first of all, the challenges around spectrum harmonization for LTE. I think we're seeing a number of bands are being used, 700 megahertz in the US, 2.6 being widely made available around the world, and then also start bringing into the fold of AWS bands in the US, the unfolding digital dividend debate in Europe, and then to make things even more interesting and complex, start looking at refarming, be it the 900 or the 1800 bands of 2G or 3G. And I think you put it all together and you start looking at a very interesting picture that starts emerging, which is how do we achieve roaming, frequency. If you go higher up on the frequency bands, it has a direct impact on the network cost. Now, 700, for example, would work very well for a macro environment, providing much wider areas of coverage. 2.6, on the other hand, might, if you try to do a macro, might significantly increase the network cost. Having said that, 2.6, as an example, could be a very interesting band for operators to look at from a small cell perspective, because in the indoor environment, providing coverage, augmenting capacity, and actually, surprisingly, interestingly, would solve a number of interference mitigation issues as the signal gets held inside the building or inside the room very well. So that's one aspect of it. I think the other way to look at it is wider bands, especially when you're looking at 10 megahertz or 20 megahertz wide bands. Paired bands are harder to find, relatively speaking. Unpaired TDD spectrum bands are relatively easier to find. And I think that definitely is what's behind the survey results as well as why operators continue to look at TD-LTE. Now, TD-LTE in particular is going to be a volume technology driven out of China and India, where a lot of the TD-LTE is already being adopted. So the next thing to really look at, a hybrid network, a multi-node hybrid mode network, maybe where we look at both FDD and TDD simultaneously. And then we touched on, I talked about refarming and neo bands being available. That's what's really driving the need, all of that, for LTE-Advanced. And clearly, from an ITU perspective, that's a true 4G, but I'm sure marketing teams are going to talk about this as a 5G technology. The key things behind LTE-Advanced, first of all, carrier aggregation. And really, LTE-Advanced is all about enabling carrier aggregation of multiple contiguous and non-contiguous carriers all the way up to 100 megahertz. Why? Well, A, you're not going to find those wide bands, but as they become available in chunks, ability to aggregate them up to really now take the peak data rates and throughputs of the network to the next level. And LTE-Advanced is really targeting up to 1 gigabits peak data rates. So that's something very exciting in terms of what's yet to come. Also, one of the other things, if I may touch on, from a LTE-Advanced perspective, is relay nodes. A new network element targeted to really improve the coverage and throughput on the cell edges, but also these network elements or this HetNet node, the unique aspect of it is backhaul. And unlike for the macro networks or macro cells where you have wide backhaul, relay nodes are being targeted to really have over-the-air backhaul, taking some of the capacity from a donor base station and really improving coverage and cell edge throughput. So these are some of the newer technologies and trends that are coming out from an LTE advanced perspective. But Monica, I think a lot of technology talk already. I think we've talked on Wi-Fi, LTE, even LTE Advanced. But bottom line, all of this must lead to monetization. So can you share with us what you're seeing, operators' views on service creation and monetization?
Yes, well, this was in a way the big absence in the results. And to give you a little bit of background, what we asked the survey participants is to rate 20 different drivers, and the 6 that I mentioned are the top ones. And many of the other ones were related to service monetization and service creation. And they didn't make it to the top 6, and that was kind of surprising and scratching my head. Why is it so? And I think that it goes back to the fact that for devices and technology, the path forward is clear. It's clear where we're going. There is a lot of confidence that we are on the right track. When it gets on the other side, on the revenue side, there is clearly a lot of pressure to have increased revenues, but at the same time, there is a sense that what the current situation is not ideal, and there is a need to find new ways, but it's not entirely clear what the path is. So there is a need for disruption, but it's not clear what the sources of disruption will be. So operators are trying different things. They are clearly very active on this side, but at the same time, it's not clear what the results will be. And I think that we're seeing a lot of experimentation. It's very exciting, but at the same time, we don't have the clear answer of what's going to drive change. We really don't know, but we know that change is coming. And Manish, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how do you see that mobile operators can get a fair share of the value? This is what I keep hearing from them. They want to have a fair share of the value that they're offering to their subscribers.
Yeah, I think, as you say, conspicuous by absence, service creation and monetization, and I think best captured probably by one of your operators saying counting packets is not the way to make money. And I think that's where we really need to look at very hard in terms of how we bring service monetization and bring new services that excite the consumer and at the same time drive revenue and ARPU growth for the operators. From my perspective, I think it's video. Video is the next killer app that's waiting in the wings. It needs fat pipes, it needs fat devices, it needs big screens, and I think this is where the operators and the industry needs to take a very hard look to make sure that the investments in LTE do not only become putting fat pipes that over-the-top providers and fill the pipe with content and start monetizing it. Instead, the operators need to start looking at video as a key value generator. If we really look at the video landscape today, what we find is there are a lot of silos. Take FaceTime as an example, or take a number of solutions that are coming up where the consumer is bound. If you're an iPhone device to iPhone device, you can probably have a video calling experience, or Droid device to Droid, you can have a video calling experience. But how do we break and make it ubiquitous, make it interoperable, interworking across? And this is where the industry has shined. This is what the operators have done over the years very well with voice, creating scalable, ubiquitous mobility solutions. And it's all about really taking it to the next level. One of the things we also see is, if you look at these solutions over-the-top providers bring, one of the deficiency, well-known deficiency, is when you're pushing the traffic over an internet core or best of board with no managed QoS, that's a problem. And again, the operators, I think, have a very unique opportunity when they look at video, along with EPC and deep packet inspection enabled policy enforcement and traffic management solution, to really take quality of service on the video calling side to the next level. So I think that's a big revenue generation opportunity. And that's just the starting point. Really then building on top of it and start looking at value-added services, video-enabled. Video conferencing, I'll just use that as an example, is one prime example. Today, if you look at video conferencing, it primarily resides in the conference rooms of the large enterprise. It's the CEO's tool. But as the workforce becomes more mobile, and as the executives and the workforce is on the road, I think the opportunity again is ripe to really start offering video conferencing-like solutions built on a conversational video platform, fanning out conferencing from a conference room to the mobile workforce. And that's just one example of value-added services. A number of others, be it ringback tones. We know how strong the ringback tone adoption has been in certain parts of the world, for example, Asia Pacific, but now really kicking it to the next level and enabling video ringback tones or video mails and others, a wide variety of services, value-added services that are monetizable, that will excite the consumer, and from an operator perspective, essential to generate new revenue streams and counter the over-the-top threat. Otherwise, really building an LTE infrastructure would be like putting the fat pipes in place and leaving it to the over-the-top providers to monetize. So those are some of my thoughts on monetization side, and clearly see video at the very forefront of it. Monica, now we've talked quite a bit today about access networks, small cells, Wi-Fi, LTE-Advanced, but for traffic like video or wideband voice, etc., end-to-end links and end-to-end QoS matters. So can you share with us what are operators doing in the core network? I mean, what about upgrading their core networks to 40 gig? Are they looking at 100 gig in the core? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, I guess that moving forward, clearly what operators understand is that they need to do more. They need to do more to manage traffic, to ensure that subscribers get what they need and that the networks can deliver it. And there is only so much that they can do on the RAN, so they need to really work on the core and ensure that the core is an enabler and not a bottleneck. And so there is clearly a lot of action here. And operators have a lot of tools available, and they're ready to deploy them, although the timeline and the sense of urgency changes depending on the size of the operator, the amount of data traffic that they have. So they're moving at their own pace, but they see the transition is inevitable and in a good way. It's again, as we've seen with LTE, there is a clear path forward. They might not need everything today, but they know they're going to get there. So there is a sense of comfort that that's the way they are moving. I think that the uncertainty is exactly how they're going to interface and address the user requirements, but in terms of enabling the changes, they know what's coming. And here in the graph, you can see that for instance, streaming video optimization and 40 gig are the ones that attract more effort and interest. So a lot of them are already making the changes, already adopting these tools. And then SON is also seen as important. RAN-aware traffic management is another considered to be really important to drive change, to enable it, to basically build the basis for their growth, and also the 100 gig. So it's clear where we're going. And it's clear, I think, that operators need to start thinking of encouraging data usage rather than limiting, because that's the way that they can grow revenues in a sustainable way. So, Manish, how can you help operators achieving this?
Fundamentally, wireless operators inherently are spectrum limited, right? And unlike wireline, where throwing more fiber at the problem is an option, wireless operators just don't have the luxury of throwing spectrum at the problem on an ongoing basis. And I think that really brings traffic management, policy enforcement at the very forefront. When you have a limited pipe, how do you prioritize the traffic? How do you move the traffic to really deliver the desired QoS and the quality of experience to the end consumer based on different types of packets coming on the network? It also enables operators to start looking at offering a variety of bundles and packages, offering tiered SLAs tailored to our consumers' need. And I think that's really, it's all about improving consumers' quality of experience and maximizing network monetization. And frankly, I see deep packet inspection really as an enabling technology that enables the operators to achieve that very, very critical objective. I think, Monica, you touched on RAN-aware traffic shaping. One of the things at Radisys we do is, as we bring solutions across radio access networks, packet core, policy domain, and IMS, we do get a very good view of end-to-end networks and what are some of the key bottlenecks and key opportunities. And I think RAN-aware is a very key opportunity because at the end of the day, whether it's the backhaul or over-the-air links, the congestion in the wireless network is always in the radio access network. And ability to funnel and feedback the capacity that's available real-time in the radio access network into your policy domain is really taking the solutions to the next level. From a Radisys perspective, I would say, on the radio access network side, we've been very focused on bringing software solutions to market that really enable operators to augment capacity in a very cost-effective way as they migrate their networks from a homogeneous macro-centric to a het net. Macros have a role, and then small cells are really brought to bear to augment capacity. We take an end-to-end view. We do see that within the core network, it is absolutely essential for operators to upgrade their networks to 40 gig and beyond, start looking at 100 gig to make sure that there are no bottlenecks in the core. Having said all of that, recognize wireless networks are inherently spectrum limited, and traffic management, policy enforcement is absolutely essential to make sure that these networks don't become dumb pipes. Rather, we have smart pipes with active traffic management and policy enforcement going on. And then last but not the least, to really enable operators to drive revenue and bring new exciting services, I think at the forefront of our minds, and as we bring MPX 12,000, our media resource function, enabling operators to start rolling out voice over LTE, but built on the same solution, same platform, rolling out video-enabled, value-added services, starting from video calling, but then building on to video conferencing, video ringback tones, and a wide variety of things. So I think that's why we're very focused on bringing all these embedded solutions for wireless infrastructure, and really exciting times for us. I do want to take a quick second here, Monica, and thank you and Senza Fili for this excellent survey and research that you all have carried out on our behalf. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure working on this, and thanks to all the participants.
Thanks very much for your thoughts, Monica and Manish. As I said earlier, both Monica and Manish are going to be available to take your questions. You can type those into the text box on the main page of the webinar and look out for their answers in real time. Thank you very much for joining us today on Telecoms.com.